Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Triangle Area SQL Server User Group's main meeting. And we have with us Angela Henry. And by the way, Angela, you've already got a question from chat about whether you have swam that.
No, I have not swam that because that is off the coast, the west coast of Iceland in February. So no.
I mean, there may be better times
I have
of the
been
year.
there, but I have not swam in that.
All right, so now that we've cleared up that very important thing, first of all, everybody, thank you for coming in person. And if you're online, welcome online. We are here hosted at Tech Systems tonight, and we definitely appreciate them coming and giving us that opportunity to host. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Hannah to talk a little bit about Tech Systems and what we got here.
Hi, everyone. I've been with Tech Systems for about 9 years, pretty new, but this is my first user group. I'm pretty excited to be here and learn more about you guys. I'm a technical recruiter. I specialize in the .NET space. I do work with SQL developers. I can expand my knowledge on skill sets, and I'm open to hearing about all kind of projects you guys work on, side projects, anything. I'm super excited and ready to learn more about developers and just going on. But I know Teresa, she just got promoted to account manager, so she has a lot of companies. I specifically work with certain roles. She works with specific companies that I'm sure she'd love to talk about as well. But yeah, Tech Systems, IT staffing and services company, leading our global company as well. But we work with many local companies in the Raleigh area, such as Apple, Cisco, Red Hat, Align Technology, Relias, a lot of healthcare and banking. But if you have any other questions,
All right, thank you kindly for that. Now, without further ado, we're going to hand it off to Angela, who unfortunately couldn't be in person tonight, but we were able to get her online, so that's almost as good. So please, Angela, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, as Kevin said, I was supposed to be there in person tonight. Unfortunately, I got COVID a couple of weeks ago. My first experience with COVID, and if you've never had it, I cannot recommend it. It has been completely terrible. And then, of course, 5 days later, I shared it with Martin, my partner. So now he is sick as well. So he's running about a week behind where I was. And I'm going to apologize up front because I have to suck on cough drops so that I can actually talk and not cough while I'm talking. So with that out of the way, we're going to talk about Purview, Microsoft Purview, and we're going to see if we can answer all your data governance needs. Really quickly about myself. Again, my name is Angela Henry. I'm just over, a stone's throw away over in High Point. And I am a principal consultant at Fortified Data. I am a Microsoft data platform MVP. I have been now since 2018. I can't do math. 18. Is it 5 or 6 years? I don't know.
We'll call it 5.
And I used to be on Twitter at SQL Swimmer. My account is still there. I don't use Twitter anymore, but I am on dataplatform.social over on Mastodon. So if you go look up dataplatform.social, you can find me at SQL Swimmer there. And then with the picture there, if you haven't met me before, I am a swimmer, but I'm also a coach, an instructor, and also a USA swimming official. And I'm taking my 20 seconds to get out my soapbox and say, if you don't know how to swim, please learn. It is the only sport that can actually save your life. And if you think as an adult you cannot learn to swim, you are absolutely incorrect. I am specially trained through a US Masters program that teaches adults how to swim. So you can learn how to swim as an adult. And I do that kind of thing. So I also teach little kids how to swim, and I coach swim team too. So anyway, all right. So that's me. Now I want to know about you. And Kevin, this is where I'm going to ask for some help from you since I can't see the audience, nor can I see the chat. So show of hands, or if you are online, if you can put it in the chat. Are you a developer? Raise your hand.
We have nobody in the room willing to admit they're a developer.
Okay, that's fine.
Tracy's now willing to claim she's a developer. Former developer. I didn't want to slander her that way.
Former developer. Well, I think we were all former developers in a previous life. That's how I got started in the IT business. So back in the days before Google was a thing and screen scraping was like the height of technology. So, all right. Do we have any DBAs in the house?
We have, yes, I would call that about 2/3 of the room.
2/3 of the room. Okay, very good. What about any analysts? Do we have any analysts out there?
I'll call myself one.
Okay. How about data stewards? Do we have any data stewards in the house?
No, nobody dresses that classy.
Nice. Okay. All right. And this one, how many of you are an awesome human being?
We did get a couple of people raise their hands. Several people pointedly did not.
Right.
Anders is not.
All right. Anders is not. Anders, you're an awesome human being. Okay. If you know me, you know that this is now the part where I take a selfie with my presentation. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then, of course, I am going to post it up on social media, get my fingers out of the way. All right. Because we all know that nothing happens in real life unless you post it on social media. So, all right. That is now out of the way. Make sure I've turned the ringer off on my phone. Okay. So, we are going to talk about Purview. And specifically, we're going to talk about the data governance piece of Purview. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of level set on what data governance is kind of in this context. And at a high level, we're talking about it's a concept that enables organizations to ensure they have high quality data throughout the entire life cycle of their data. And that means that you're going to have some kind of controls in place that support your organization, your business objectives. And at the heart of data governance, it's really about the people, the processes, and the technology, and bringing them all together and making sure that everything is working correctly. And there are some key areas of data governance. So key areas are accountability and ownership. You've got availability and accessibility. You need to make sure that that data is available and it's accessible if you have the right permissions. We need to make sure that we do have the right permissions in place and that our data is secure by default. And then we also need to make sure that we have quality data, because how many times have you built a report for somebody and they come back and they say, yeah, this is garbage. All this is wrong. Well, you know what? If you have poor data quality, of course, it's going to be wrong. So you need to make sure that you've got good quality in there. And you also need to make sure that that data is usable. Is it in a usable format? So to that end, whoa, holy cow, that is not what I meant to do. I accidentally hit the scroll button. So sorry about that. And really, you can distill this down into kind of 3 basic needs. Discovery. You need to know where your data lives, and how discoverable is it? Do you know where it is, how to find it, kind of thing? Access. You need to know that you have the ability to secure that and control the access to your data. And then the last one is insights. You need to be able to understand and measure what you actually have. Now, there are lots of different motivations for data governance. But really kind of what it boils down to is a lot of times company executives responding to external regulations like SOX, which is the Sarbanes-Oxley, or HIPAA, or GDPR, or various other data privacy regulations. And those motivations really kind of boil down to risk and managing that risk. So you've got financial risks. You can have, if you're making decisions based on data, that is a huge financial risk, because if that data if the quality is poor, you're making decisions based on bad data. So you could actually affect your bottom line. So there's a huge financial motivation right there. There's also efficiency can be a motivation, minimizing or eliminating having to do rework. You want to be able to have your staff be as effective and enable them so that they can do their job in a very efficient manner. And then security, again, how many times do we, get emails or see it on social media or in the news that there has been another security breach? So those are really, the three things that we can kind of distill data governance, kind of the three ideas down to. And when we do that, and we want to be able to implement data governance, we're going to need technology to help us out with this. So regardless of our motivation, we're going to have some kind of technology that's going to help us implement a data governance platform, whatever you want to call it. And that's where Purview from Microsoft comes in. Now, what Microsoft did is, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, they created an Azure data catalog. And that was really cool because it was a catalog that lived up in the cloud. You could connect it to all your different data sources. You could just create your data catalog and put it all together. It had some pretty big holes in it. And in fact, holes big enough you could drive like Mack trucks through. So they said, instead of upgrading or enhancing data catalog, let's instead start from scratch with a brand new product. And that's when they came up with Azure Purview. Well, if you are familiar with the Microsoft Risk and Compliance, they have now renamed that, and they have renamed Azure Purview, and they've put it all under this rebranding umbrella of Microsoft Purview. And what I'm actually going to talk about today is this unified data governance piece. I'm not going to be talking about the risk and compliance at all. If you're interested, the risk and compliance, that's where you're going to find your sensitivity labels that you can apply to emails or documents, all that kind of stuff. So that's essentially your unstructured data, if you will, whereas the unified data governance piece is really aimed at scanning those actual data sources, whether it be a structured database like SQL Server, or a cloud-based, or if you've got software as a service data out there. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the unified data governance piece of Microsoft Purview. And I'm going to have to cough really quick here. Hold on a second. All right, sorry about that. Even with the cough drops, it's still kind of hard to talk and not have to cough. So let's see how we can take these three basic needs and apply them to Microsoft Purview. When we do that, we've got that discovery. And in discovery, we can map that to the data map and the data catalog in Microsoft Purview. That's going to tell us where our data lives and what other people need to be able in order to discover that data easily. We've got access. We need to be able to ensure that we have the ability to access the data, but we also need the ability to be able to, create repeatable processes so that people can request access to data if they need it. And you can do that with workflows and data policies. And then lastly, we've got those insights. We need to be able to identify what kinds of sensitive data we have, and we need to know where it lives in our data estate. And we can do that with data insights in Microsoft Purview. So let's just kick this off really quick, and we're going to look at the discovery piece first. So with discovery, I said that's where the data map and the data catalog come in. So those are two different pieces. And one thing about Purview is that it's an infrastructure as a service offering. So essentially, when you create a Purview account in your Azure tenant, it's spinning up a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes. And for that reason, it's actually pretty expensive, and you cannot pause the Microsoft Purview service at all. So just something to kind of keep in mind, because you're setting up this entire infrastructure behind the scenes in your Azure tenant. So when we take a look at the data map, again, it's infrastructure, or did I said infrastructure as a service? It's platform as a service. So it's a whole platform. Sorry, I'm going to blame that on COVID because my brain is still a little squishy. And what you can do with your data map is that's where you can register and you can scan your data sources. And once you do that, you can put those data sources into collections. And collections serve as kind of security boundaries, but they also provide you a way to display your data estate in a hierarchical manner. And you'll see that when we get a couple more slides in. Classifications. So you can apply classifications to your data. Now, classifications are things like being able to identify whether data is a national ID number, a social security number, a bank number, a passport number, email address. Those are classifications. And there's a whole engine that is out there that allows, and it uses the Apache Atlas 2.2 APIs. And those APIs go out there and they scan your data, and then that's how they are able to figure out the classification of the kinds of data that you have in your data estate. So now we have to take a look at our data sources. So when you have a data source, first thing you have to do is you have to register it. And there are all kinds of different data sources that are supported right now natively. There's about 40 different connectors available as of today. Doesn't matter whether it's on-prem or cloud-based or whether it's a software as a service. If there's a native connector for it, you can go ahead and register it. And you can do that, all of that through the Purview portal. Now, there is a caveat here. 40 data source types, that doesn't sound like very many, especially like when you look at Power BI, which supports like over 200 data connectors natively. So remember I said that there was the Apache Atlas APIs. If you can code against a REST API, you can code it to connect to any kind of data source that you want, and then you can programmatically register your data sources. Once you have a data source registered, then you're going to set up a scan. And the difference here is that when you register a data source, all you're basically doing is saying, what type of data source is it? Is it SQL Server? Is it Azure SQL Database? Is it Data Lake Gen 2? And what is the name? How do you get to it? If it's, Data Lake, is there a URL? If it's a database, is it a server? Give it the server name, that kind of stuff. No credentials are stored with the registration. When you go to scan it, that's when you're going to provide credentials in order for Purview to use those Atlas APIs to scan your database or your data source, whether it's structured or unstructured. So you will need to have credentials set up so that you can put those in for your scans to be able to talk to the different data sources that you already have registered, and so that can collect all the information out there. So then we have collections. And like I said before, they provide that hierarchical view of your data estate, but they also serve as security boundaries. So depending on how your organization is set up, you have to be very, very thoughtful on how you create those collections. One of the reasons why is that once you create a collection, you can't rename it. You're just kind of stuck there. So you'd have to delete it and create a brand new one, but you can only delete a collection if it's empty. So if you've already added data sources to a collection, you have to delete your data sources, then delete the collection, and then add a brand new one. So you do have to be very thoughtful when you are creating your collections. So I've got a couple examples here, depending on what your organization looks like. And these are some best practices that Microsoft has put forth. So if you are a organization where you only live or you only have one region, and in this case, this is just a single region, and you'll notice at the very top of here, we've got this thing called a root collection. Every single Purview account starts with that root collection, and then everything branches out from there. Then you create your organization, and then from there, in this example, then they're breaking it out into different departments. And then from the different departments, then they're breaking it down in either to additional teams or sub-departments, and sometimes even projects. So this is a good example of how to kind of create that collection hierarchy. If you are probably a pretty small company, you're only in one region, you only have a few departments. Well, what about if you have multiple regions? Well, again, you've got that root at the top. Down here, they've got it broken down where you've got the US, then you've got Canada, then you've got the LATAM. So those are the different regions. And then they break it down from there into the different departments. So you've got your US marketing, sales, and finance, and then you've got Canada's version of those, and then you've got the LATAM version of those. And then going one more level down from that, then you can again have those additional, sub teams or sub departments, projects, whatever, for each one. Now, again, these collections, each one of these boxes is considered a collection, and those are your security boundaries. So if somebody in LATAM, if you don't want people in the LATAM to see anything over in the US, this is exactly how you need to do it. Break it out and put those data sources in those appropriate collections based on the region. One other best practice that Microsoft is recommending is, what about if you have like a whole bunch of data scientists on staff and you span multiple regions? So their best practice that they're recommending, again, you've got that root at the very top, and then they're saying, go ahead, break it up into the regions. And then from there, break it down into the zones. So that you've got your raw zone, your silver, your gold, or, if you want to use the whole complete medallion architecture, then you call it, bronze, silver, gold, whatever nomenclature you want to use for your transformation zones, if you will. Then that's probably the best way to do it that way. All right. Any questions really quick
Yeah, there is one question that came in here, and that is, suppose that you've got, say, 3,000 identical databases. Would you
Okay.
need to scan all of them, or could you just tell that, hey, here's number 1, and then 2 through 3,000 are actually all the same?
Well, that's a good question. So are all 3,000 of those databases named exactly the same?
I'm going to assume probably not.
Probably not. So in that case, I would say if you want to know about all 3,000 of those, because they all have different names, then you're most likely going to want to register all 3,000 of those databases. Now, this might get very cumbersome, and we'll get to this in a second. Pointing and clicking 3,000 times to register and then create scans and do all of that. Remember, you always have access to the Apache Atlas API so that you can do this programmatically. And this is a perfect scenario where that kind of thing is going to work a whole lot better than it is to point and click for 3,000 databases.
Yeah, that's a lot of intern hours.
Yes. So you can do things called scoped scans. And so when you register a data source, you can register the server and not provide a database. And then when you go to do the scan, you can say, when you scan this, only scan these 50 databases or only scan those 40 databases. So you can do those kinds of things as well, but there's still a lot more pointing and clicking than if you use the Apache Atlas APIs. So if you've got somebody on staff who is good at being able to write code and can interact with the APIs and do that, that's going to be a lot better. And honestly, that's what a lot of our clients who are like really large, they have people on staff who can, they're developers. They can write up, against an API and they can pull that information in. And the best way to do that, just from my personal experience, is creating a Postman collection and going that route. So does that answer the question, or is there more?
That answered the question. Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let's talk classifications. So classifications, they allow you to use kind of like these local tags to assign a unique class to the data. They're different than sensitivity labels, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Again, those classifications are things that allow you to figure out whether something is a passport number or a driver's license number, a credit card number, all things so that you can classify the actual piece of data. And out of the box, right now, there are over 200 classifications that you get in Microsoft Purview. And again, passport number, driver's license, credit card, social security number, all that kind of stuff. If by chance none of those 200 are going to work from you, you can create custom classifications for your organization. And you've got two ways that you can do that. You can either use regular expressions, or you can provide it a dictionary to say, if we see this, this is how we're going to classify it, as opposed to regular expressions where you're looking for a pattern. And that's what the system classifications use, is that regular expressions to find the patterns that have been defined for those. And again, the Apache Atlas APIs, these are perfect if you need to do bulk operations. They're going to allow you to create or update objects within Purview. You can also delete things in Purview using the Apache Atlas APIs. It also allows you to do discovery. So if you have a web application that you want to be able to pull in information, you can use the Apache Atlas APIs. You can also browse whatever you have using the Apache Atlas APIs. So those come in really handy. And that's what Purview is based on, is those Apache Atlas APIs. So if you can do it in the GUI, you can do it in the APIs. And conversely, you can do a whole lot more with the Apache Atlas APIs than you can with the GUI. So just something to keep in mind if you have a really large data estate and you have the skills to be able to code against the APIs. All right, so the data catalog. So this is that second piece of discovery. And the data catalog, that's what's storing the metadata about your data sources. It's not storing the actual data. Your data is staying safe in its location. It's just storing the metadata about your database. And the data catalog in Purview, you get search functionality. So you can go out there and quickly search for any kind of data asset. You can search by type. You can search by name. You can all kinds of things you can search by. You also get a business glossary. So you can store definitions of terms, or if there are calculations that are really complex, you can put those in your glossary, and then everybody knows that this is what that calculation is behind a measure, whatever. And then the last thing that you get is data lineage. Now, I'm going to put a big caveat on this because even though it's super cool, just know that not all data sources support data lineage. So remember how I talked about there were those 40 different data source connectors right now? Not all 40 of those give you data lineage. So you're going to have to go out and look at the list of data sources. They have a matrix on the website, and I've got a list of resources at the end of the slide deck that will take you to that place, that page, so that you can figure out, and it'll tell you whether it supports lineage or not. So you just have to do your homework first. Don't promise lineage until you know that it's actually available for your data source type. So again, what does, I said, you know, it stores the metadata about your data source, but what is it actually storing? Well, it's going to store the name of your data source. So if it's a server, it's going to be a server name. If it's data lake, it's going to be a URL most likely. The type. What type of data source is it? Is it a SQL Server database? Is it an Oracle database? Is it a storage account? That kind of stuff. And then the location. Where's it at? You know, is it, again, the server name, depending on the data source type, the location and name may be very similar. Or you can use that for your region information. And then it will store other additional information that you can customize within the environment to add additional fields about your data source. So, oops, I keep hitting the scroll button. That's very sensitive today. All right. So I know what some of you might be thinking. And here's Angry Angela. And Angry Angela says, hey, I don't want my data to live in the cloud. And Happy Angela says, don't worry about it. Your data is safe in your data source. It's not going anywhere. All Purview does is go out there. It will grab the metadata. And then in order to be able to apply those classifications, it will scan the data looking to see if it can match those classification patterns so that it can apply the classifications to it. That's all it's doing. It's not storing the actual data, but it does have to scan it so that it can apply those classifications. So whatever account you are using when you set up the scans for your data sources, they are going to have read permissions on that data. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. And that is it for the discovery piece of Purview. Do we have any questions before we go on to the access piece?
No questions, it looks like. Although, chat, this is your opportunity to get a question in right now while Angela's taking a drink. The best opportunity to ask a question.
It is. I'm going to put another cough drop in my mouth, too.
All right, so while Angela's doing that, I'm going to vamp for a few seconds to cover that airtime. So if you do have any questions, this is a great opportunity to get them in chat. If you don't have any questions, you could still just say in chat, hey, I don't have any questions. I mean, then I could at least say, oh, okay, we have nobody who has questions in chat. Otherwise, someone is probably typing right now. They're spending a lot of time typing out this really long, detailed question, and then it's going to come in like 3 minutes later when you're already on the next topic.
Yes. Yes.
But okay, no questions.
No questions. All right. Well, then let's move along and let's start talking about the access piece of Purview. So in Purview, we need to be able to ensure that we have the ability to access the data, but in a controlled manner. And how you can do that in Purview is using workflows and data policies. Now, both of these features are still in preview. They've been in preview for quite a while because, you know, we're talking about granting access to your data sources. So they need to make sure that they get this right. So when we look at the workflows, again, they're currently in preview. Really, what we're trying to do is create an automated, repeatable process for people to get access or request access to a data source or something else in Purview. So there are actually two different kinds of workflows. And one of them is for the data, that's the data governance workflow, and that's to request access to data sources and at the loss prevention collection level. And then the other kind of workflow is for your data catalog. And that's the kind of workflow where it's for those people who have to manage approvals for glossary terms or those kinds of things. So those are kind of the two separate workflows that are available within Purview. And workflows are managed by a workflow admin role, which is, again, also in preview because workflows are in preview. So if we take a quick look at what workflows look like, you're going to see that this looks really familiar if you've ever done anything in, it's not called Flow anymore. Oh, Power Automate. I always forget. Power Automate doesn't make any sense to me, but that's okay. So you can see, you know, walking through here, how we've got, it's very human readable. It's essentially a drag and drop environment where you can drop things in and then configure the settings there. So it's a really super easy thing to do. So that's workflows. Now there's data policies, which again are currently in preview. And you can use this to request access to data sources. And they come in human readable instructions. So it's not code, and you'll see it in just a second. And it's actually kind of a drag and drop scenario as well to create these policies. And these policies are created in a two-step process. First, you create a draft of the policy. Then you actually have to publish it in order for a workflow to be able to consume that policy or to use that policy. Now, of course, there are going to be some prerequisites when you are creating data policies. And the first one is, well, that's not exactly what I wanted it to do. It went backwards in my, well, that's kind of bizarre. I'm not sure exactly what happened to my animations there, but it went a little wonky on my side. I'm not sure exactly what you guys saw, but all right. So there are some prerequisites. So first you have to register Purview as a resource provider. You're going to have to do that in the Azure portal. You have to enable the data use management, and that's just a toggle on the data source registration screen. I am going to say you need to use this with caution because this can open up a security hole. Because remember, this is so that you can grant access to your data sources. So you need to make sure that you understand exactly what you're doing when you are creating these data policies and when you enable that data use management toggle within Purview. when you register that data source. And then the last thing is that you're going to have to configure roles at the root collection, and then things become inherited. So you start at the very top, and then they, you remember how we had it broken out by region, then you can apply different roles within those collections, but everything has to start at the root collection, because if you can't get to the root, you're not going to be able to get to the nodes. So I hope that makes sense to people. All right, so let's take a quick look at creating data policies. We've got on the left-hand side here, it's the screen that creates it. We give it a name, we give it a description, and then you can see how it builds that out. You start by clicking that new policy button, and it spells it all out for you right there. So we're going to deny read on data classified as PII to the group non-FTEs. And what you can do is you have to have an effect and you have to have an action. And they've color coded this, which I think is really nice, so that you can see in that policy statement exactly what is where, what goes where. Once you have that policy created, then you're going to have to publish it. And you get to this from a different screen. And once you save your policy, it takes you back out to the list of data policies, and then you publish it. And that's where this window comes in right here. So that is our workflows and our data policies, and those work in conjunction. You can have a workflow consume or use a data policy to provide access to different things within Purview. Now, there are lots of roles in Purview, which is a good thing. We didn't have a whole lot of roles when we had data catalog. Basically, everybody was just like, okay, yeah, let's everybody use it. So starting out, you have the collection admin. Collection admins can do absolutely anything by default, and they are data source admins. The only thing they cannot do by default is they cannot be, they're not members of the data curator group or the data readers, but they can grant that access to themselves. So just be aware of that for your collection admins. You've got your data source admins, and they can manage the scans that are set up, but nothing else unless they've been granted the reader or the curator role. Then you've got your data curators. These are the people who are going to be adding your data sources, but they can't access the scans. So you have a kind of division of labor there between your data source admins and your data curators. You've got your data readers. These are the people that are only going to be able to read the assets in the collection that they have been granted access to. Then you've got your workflow admins. Again, this is in preview because workflows and data policies are in preview. And that's what's going to allow the users to access the authoring of those workflows and be able to publish the workflows out there on the specific collections that they have access to. You've got the data share contributor. So if you want to be able to share data within an organization and with outside organizations, you have to have a data share contributor role. Data share is something that, even though I have read about it umpteen times, I still don't quite understand a practical use for it. So if anybody out there has a practical use for data shares, I would really like to hear it. I've done several. Hold on, I got a cough again. Okay, sorry about that. So I've done several Purview implementations, and not once have we ever done data shares. So again, if you have seen it out in the wild, I want to hear from you.
So Angela, Anders asked, could that possibly be useful for somebody like an auditor?
Maybe. That is a really good question. I'm wondering, that might be, I'm going to say yes, but again, I have read what the data share capabilities do, and like I said multiple times, and I still don't understand. But I'm going to go back and read it from that perspective and see, because that to me, that would make sense. Yeah. All right. I'm going to take that as a takeaway. Thank you, Anders. That's a great question or great comment.
Oh, Tracy's got a follow up on that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Okay, so the question is, could it also be a viable case, say, if you're working for a subsidiary of a larger company, where you have to share information with the parent company, and there's got to be some way to send that communication, but that you want to have some level of control over what information gets sent, and then of course they're not going to share all of their information with the subsidiary.
So I'm not sure if that would actually be a good use case, because remember how you set those collections up, it's a hierarchy. So it starts at the very top. So depending on how your organization is set up and how your collections are set up, if they're already at the top, they might already have access to that anyway, if they have been added to that collection. So, but that is another good potential use case, and I will check that one out as well. Thank you. Anybody else?
Nothing else at the moment.
Okay. All right. Then we have the Insights Reader. So what the Insights Reader does is that's what allows you to access all of those reports that have all of the information about your data estate. So you may be able to read all of the data within the data map, but if you haven't been assigned the Insights Reader, you can't read the reports that have been generated based on your data estate. So something to keep in mind there. And then the last thing is a policy author, which is again in preview, because policies work in tandem with workflows. So, and the policy authors, those are the people who are actually going to be able to create, view, update, delete those actual policies in the management app in Purview. All right. And that is it for access. Any other questions before we move on to taking a look at what kind of insights you can get?
Looks like no questions at the moment.
Okay, then we're just going to keep rolling. So, you know, these are the questions that we get all the time. How many data sources do we have? Well, we don't know. Do we have 2? Do we have 20? Or do we just really not know? Do you know where all of them are? Do you know where they live? Do you know how to connect to them? Do you know what they're used for? Do you know if you're storing sensitive data? And if you are, do you know who has access to it? So those are the kinds of things that the insights, and within Purview, they call it an app. It's the Insights app that allows you to do that. So it lets you see what data you have. It lets you see where your sensitive data lives. It lets you look at your adoption metrics. So if you wanted to be able to see if people were using the glossary and adding terms and tagging things, you can see that with the adoption metrics. They do actually have glossary usage in addition to adoption metrics as well. So there are a few different kinds of insights available. And there's kind of role based. So you've got the data stewardship insights, you've got asset glossary, and classifications, and sensitivity insights. So those are the 5 basic kind of categories of insights that you can get. So when we look at that data stewardship, that's the person who really needs to be able to take a look at the data estate and get some kind of high level KPIs that are out there. So you can see how many assets have been curated, and then asset ownership. One of the things that you can do within Purview is you can assign owners. And this is very, very critical, because how many times have you come across a database and there you found a problem with it and you're like, well, who owns the data for this? And everybody just kind of looks at the other person and they just kind of, I don't know. This is where Purview can be very helpful. It allows you to assign ownership to your data assets. And you can monitor that KPI to see how many have owners, how many don't have owners. And then you can also see a little bit more detail about that data estate health right there. So you can see, how many total assets you have, how many have sensitive classifications applied to them, how many have been fully curated, how many where owners have been assigned, how many don't have classifications, all that. And you can even drill down even farther than this to get even more information. So that's kind of the data stewardship insights. Then we've got the catalog adoption insights. So this is the one that lets you go out and take a look and see, what assets what do you have, and what are people actually looking at in your data catalog. And you can break it down by daily, weekly, monthly, and you can see, what their curation level is and how many times people are viewing those assets. So that comes in super handy. And then you've got, all right, come on, baby, you can do it. It doesn't want to advance my slide anymore. My screen got kind of stuck. Hold on a second. There we go. All right. Now we can take a look at the assets. So this is looking at the actual assets that we have. And this allows us to go out there and see how many do we have. We've got those KPIs up at the top so that we can see what's unclassified, whether we have owners assigned or not. And then we've got that tree map down at the bottom so that we can see a breakdown of each of our assets. You can see all the data assets. You can see what's new since the last time scans were run. You can also see what's been deleted. So that can be very, very helpful and provide some really good insights into your data estate and the assets that you've got. Then you've got your glossary. So we can see how many total terms we've got out there, your KPIs up here at the top. And we can see what terms are out there and don't have any assets assigned to them. You can expire glossary terms as well. So that's kind of an interesting concept. And then again, you've got your KPIs down here. You kind of take the snapshot, of what glossary terms, if you're going to use kind of that approval workflow, what's been approved, what's expired, what's in a draft. And then again, if it's incomplete. So there are several attributes to a glossary term that will allow you to see whether you're filling your glossary out correctly for your organization. Classification insights. So remember, this is the types of data that you're storing out there. So are we storing, national IDs, passport numbers, and then it has some classification categories that you can put those kind of fall into. So you can see kind of the counts of where those classifications of data are, how many you have. You can even see by source where those classifications are living. So that can come in super handy. And again, you can drill down through a lot of these reports to get more detail on that. And then lastly are the sensitivity insights. And the sensitivity insights are if you are using sensitivity labels. So remember at the very beginning when I talked about the Microsoft compliance, risk and compliance, that's where the sensitivity labels are applied. That's what this sensitivity insights is looking at. It's looking at the sensitivity labels. People quite often get confused between classifications and sensitivity labels. So I want to make sure those are two completely different things. So you can see if you have, I think these are these first three are the kind of out of the box, confidential, secret, highly confidential. And then they've added some other custom sensitivity labels in there as well. So you can see that. And that is a wrap for the insights. Now we've got about 4 minutes left because I don't want to take up everybody's time. I did want to say that they just announced, and because of my COVID brain, I can't remember whether it was last month or the end of the month before that, the end of the July, beginning of August, I'm not sure when it was, but they announced a free version of Purview. It is still in preview. And it does have limited capabilities. Essentially, you get the data catalog with limited capabilities. You get the data share, and you get limited data sources. This is the kicker for me. Those limited data sources, you get Azure Blob Storage, Data Lake Gen 2 storage, Azure SQL databases, and Azure subscriptions. That's it. Those are the only data sources that are supported in the free version, but it's free. So if you're a Microsoft shop and that's all you need is a data catalog, then it's free. You're good to go. Notice you don't see anything in here about insights. So you get no reporting on it. You also don't see anything in here about the data map. So you can't see that hierarchical view of your data estate either. You simply have just a list of your data sources. And in fact, let me show this to you. So if you go out to the portal, and I've got the free version assigned to my personal Microsoft 365 account. So you can see there's the data catalog. We can view all the apps. So remember how I said they call everything apps in here. So anything that so if we had the data map, it would show up here. If you had insights, it would show up here. All we can see is the data catalog. And when you go in here, you can search the catalog. It does remember your recent searches, so that might be helpful. You can also, hold on, let me re-authenticate. There we go. Okay. You can also browse by source type. And again, because it's the free version, all we're going to get my Azure subscriptions, my SQL databases, and my Azure SQL servers. So if you've got anything else, you're kind of SOL, but at least you have those things. And again, here's the data sharing. I have never, ever found a use case for this, but I'm going to take those two away, the auditing and then kind of parent-child company, and see how I can frame it from that point of view and see if that makes sense. And with that, I am done. Ta-da! So all the different ways that you can reach out and connect with me if you like. Again, I am no longer on Twitter. My account is still there, but I don't go on Twitter. I do have my own website, SQLswimmer.com. I am on LinkedIn. The only caveat I'm going to say on LinkedIn, if you want to connect, I'm happy to connect. But please tell me where you saw me or how you know me, because if I don't recognize your name, I will not accept an invitation. There is way, way too much hacking and spamming and nefarious bad actors out there. So don't take it personally. If I don't know you, if you don't tell me how you know who I am, I will not accept your invitation to connect. And again, I do have a whole list of resources out here And I'll work with Kevin to get you all the slide deck so that you have access and you can click on the links and check it all out. And that is it.
All right. Thank you, Angela. So one quick question that I've got is about pricing, since you mentioned the free version. And just a rough idea of pricing. So not necessarily here's the exact cost breakdown, here's the schedule, but is this the type of thing where, you know, I'm gonna have to take out a mortgage to pay for Purview, or
You just might. When they first came out with Purview, it was, compared to how the pricing works now, I would say it was very simple. There were 3 things that you had to look at. And it wasn't cheap, but it was at least kind of easier to figure out how much your costs were going to be. I haven't costed it in the last month since they've made a whole bunch of changes. Prior to those changes, if you had bare bones implementation with just a few data sources, you were looking at roughly $300 to $500 a month. And that's with like 2 or 3 data sources and only scanning once a month. We all know our data assets change more than once a month, so you're going to have to scan more than that. Well, they charge by the scan and how long those scans run. So, you know, I have seen some of those Purview bills come into the $5,000 and $7,000 a month range. So you may need to take out a second mortgage. You may be able to just kind of get by and, you know, cut back on coffee in the office. I don't know.
I mean, that's like one Nissan
To answer
Versa
your
every 3
question.
months. Granted, I don't know why you'd want to buy a Nissan Versa every 3 months, but still, just on principle.
Good. Yes. Any other questions?
Looks like we've got no questions in the house,
No.
and
Okay.
like we're quiet on the chat. So yeah, I think you did a great job answering everything.
Okay.
All right,
Awesome.
so
Thanks. Yeah.
people
All
are
right.
like trying to clap and not quite sure what the what the etiquette is. So we'll give you a clap. All right. So with that, we're gonna wrap things up for tonight. Thank you again, Angela, for this great presentation. Excellent overview. Remember, folks, next week we will be online only. So come check us out, meetup.com/tripass. We'll have everything posted for next week's meeting there. And until we see each other again, whether that's in person, whether it's online, everybody, take care.
Bye.